He's intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.
Oh my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
Tatum drives down and throws it down. Wow!
To throw, rainbows it down the right side for Kyle Pitts. He's got it. He's there. Touchdown. Oh my!
Oh my indeed. Welcome everyone to the Sports Bits podcast with Moko. Here to talk about all things Florida Gators and Boston Celtics. You can follow me on Twitter at SportsBitsPod for any updates on when I upload. I will also be tweeting out live takes and reactions of the games being played that day. I know I keep saying this, but this is just for sakes of when I get this thing set up. But if you're on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, listen to the podcast. If you're on Apple, please leave a 5-star review. And if you're on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. It'd be much appreciated. Get to more ears. Get the word out there that this podcast is an upcoming podcast. And I love doing this thing, so hopefully it can start to grow. And for the Florida Gators side, there's just a quick update on the coaching hires. There's a guy named Jules Montinar who just got hired for the Florida defense. He's the last coaching slot that needed to get filled on the secondary side. So it's going to be Wilsley McGriff and Jules Montinar. And I don't know who's going to be taking what role, but he's still there for the secondary. And to quote Dan Mullen, his experience in recruiting in the state and familiarity in the conference will be huge assets to this program. He's referring to the part that he's been involved in at Georgia and Texas. I mean, not Georgia and Texas, Georgia and Alabama, sorry about that. But yeah, he's been involved in Georgia and Alabama, and he's a native to Naples because he just recently came from USF. Yeah, with at the what was his name? Yeah, Jeff Scott. He came from Jeff Scott's coaching tree, so he has experience in the Florida area, so that'd be good for him. But one thing to highlight about his experience though, with being in the SEC and being in the South, that his time at Georgia and Alabama were only assistant roles. He was never actually a serious coordinator or any major type of coaching role there. So it's still good to have experience in the SEC as a coach, but he never had any serious coaching roles. His major part of his resume that showed that he had some coaching experience was at Texas State in 2016 to 2018. For 2 years, he was the cornerbacks and special teams coordinator. So that really does show that he has experience, but not in a big Power 5 kind of setting. He did have experience at USF. So, that does have some, G5 experience, which is, I don't know how that's going to translate to the SEC, but, we will see. I think the big thing about this hire is the recruiting aspect. Excuse me. Yeah, but the recruiting aspect is a big thing. I think with these last two secondary hires, it was important to have the recruiting aspect, just because I think, Dan Mullen was hired to increase our productivity on recruiting, and I think he's done a great job so far. And I think with, hiring new guys at every position, secondary, quarterback, linebacker, whatever, they should have a good recruiting background as well, just to help Dan Mullen compete with, the likes of Georgia, LSU, Alabama, who were actually ranked top 5 this last recruiting cycle in 2021. So it's kind of tough competing against those guys, and you're probably fourth fiddle next to Texas A&M and, probably you could say Tennessee if they get their act together. But yeah, it's going to be tough for them, and that's why I think that he was highlighting about the recruiting parts with Wellesley McGriff and with Jules Montinar, that he wanted a good recruiting background, especially in the state of Florida when they're trying to I think what Dan Mullen's trying to do is trying to lock up the state so he's able to just keep the recruits in state. You're going to be competing with Florida State if they're ever good again. They get their act together, and also with Miami, who's starting to get stuff fixed with their coach. I can't forget their name, but yeah, Derek King will be back there as well. So that's also another selling point for Miami. He's you're going to have a great quarterback back. So hopefully, that'll pull some guys. And I think they did with their last 2 5-stars they just recruited from the same high school that Jason Marshall was actually from. And I know Florida was trying to compete with those guys to get all those three group of guys, the 3 trio from that high school, to actually go to Florida instead of, being split up and 1 going to Florida and 2 going to Miami. But yeah, Miami's doing a great job with recruiting as well. So that's one thing you have to really be concerned about if you're a Florida fan, just because, you have another in-state rival to worry about. Plus, if USF, ever becomes very powerful like they did in 2018, they could eventually pull some recruits away from UF as well. So you really need to be aware of that, and be prepared and hire good people for the future. And I think they did that with Jules Montinar because I think the recruiting part, is, as I said, I keep saying it's a big aspect to it. But yeah, that's really it for the quick update. There's not much else in the transfer portal. We've already talked about the linebackers, and the defensive tackle situation. Also about the special teams, about the kicker that left, and also the new kicker that came in from Mississippi State. So we didn't. There's not really much to talk about. But actually, in our next segment for the Boston Celtics, there's a lot to talk about. Just because it's a doubleheader with the Sixers, that's going to be a big thing. And I'm actually going to have a new guest on the segment. So if you guys stick around for that, you guys will be able to hear him and his opinion. He's also a big Nets fan, so this does concern him. So yeah, he's always dealing with the Sixers and Bucks like we are, and he can give his opinion on that. But yeah, on the Florida side, that is it. I will see y'all next week. I don't know what's going to be happening. It's a pretty slow time. But yeah, until next week, boys, I will see y'all. And if you're here for the Boston segment, stick around, and I'll be back in a minute. See you. And we're back. All right. So a quick little side note. We do have two guys on the podcast now. Of course, my friend James is back, but we also got new guests. Reed, would you like to introduce yourself?
What's up, guys? How you doing? Thanks for having me, Moko. Appreciate it.
Nothing else. That's it.
I mean, what else? I'm not very interesting. We're in the same grade, kid.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. Well, to the guests who don't know, Reed's one of my longtime boys. He's one of my main guys. When I came to Mason, I met along with James, and James actually introduced me to Reed.
My pleasure, brother.
And the background is he's a big Nets fan, so you can give
big Nets fan. That's right.
Give him shit for whatever you want.
No. I've been a Nets fan since they were in New Jersey. I don't want to hear any bandwagon. I don't want to hear any bandwagon talk.
There you go. He's a respected Nets fan, not like a bandwagon. All right, so I'm gonna jump right into it. We're gonna mainly talk about the Sixers game, and then we're gonna jump like a quick segment on the Bulls and the Cavs games because those were kind of blowouts, and those didn't really have anything to talk about. Only a couple things. So mainly the Sixers game we're going to talk about because that 2-game series was kind of sad and it needed a little breaking down considering how much crap we did. We just built a whole brick house on the floor. So first thing I want to talk about mainly is Joel Embiid because he was the menace on the court. I want to just throw out the stat line for right now. And Joel, I'm going to have his game 1 stats and his game 2 stats. So his game 1 stats, he had 42 points and 10 rebounds. And the game 2 stat, 38 and 11 rebounds. And this is without Robert Williams, so I don't know if that had a factor in it. But James, I want to go to you first because you're a big Robert Williams guy. How do you think that affected the court?
Personally, I think that that Robert Williams was easily which we've mentioned before on your podcast that Robert Williams is probably the best defensive center that you guys have on your roster for the Celtics, and for him not to be there definitely hurt them a lot because they don't have the size to be able to back up and hold Joel Embiid under 30. I mean, he's already a dominant force. He's an MVP candidate this year. I mean, Robert Williams is easily could contain him. I'm not saying that he would be able to contain him to a ridiculous amount, like 15 points or anything, but he might have been able to held him to like 20, 25. And I think that, he might have been able to get the offense going a little bit more with pick and roll, especially if he was there. But the lack of him not being there definitely hurt their center position. And you guys just don't have the type of power in the center position still, which is a shame because Brad Stevens is still resilient to like not playing Robert Williams full time, and I think that that's still a poor decision by him, and I think that they need to just let him loose. But I mean, don't forget to mention that Tobias Harris also had a game when they played the second time. I mean, he had 23 points and 8 rebounds on top of that. Being able to contain Tobias Harris is also a problem for the Celtics because he's such a good player, even though a lot of people forget about him because he's now a third option for them. So I think that them having a little bit more wide open space for being able to facilitate on their side of the court more is a lot more difficult for the Celtics defense to contain.
Yeah, before Reed goes, I actually made a mistake. So he was out the first game. The second game, he was in the game for 15 minutes. So I don't know if that made any effect. But I
But
was right
that's
or
what
wrong.
I'm
It was
saying,
actually
though.
Aaron Nesmith who was actually out that game. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And
But
Nesmith
that
after that, the most two recent games has been really good. But would you like to say something about that?
even so though, like mentioned before, Brad Stevens is still holding him back from not playing the starting position, which I think is hurting the team. I mean, Stevens needs to open his mind a little bit more, which is what I mentioned to you a couple podcasts ago, that he's still kind of similar to Doc Rivers, if to be specific, that they have a certain game plan and that they want to stick to it. And I think that he needs to widen his options a little bit more, especially against teams like the Sixers, who have a lot of guys that can score, and you can't really contain only one person. You kind of have to be able to work as a team and have that team chemistry on the floor, especially on defense, since the Celtics defense has been struggling a little bit this year. Robert Williams would have helped so much.
Reed, would you have anything to add that as a Nets fan you are concerned about the Sixers? So do you have anything to add to that little bit?
Yeah, so actually, I think James brought up a lot of good points, especially about the Celtics defense. They're definitely, I mean, you got Daniel Tice as another center. Okay, not. I mean, Daniel Tice isn't terrible, but obviously he's not really someone that can be like he's not really a first center option. And then Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown are also two very good defensive players, but they can't really guard centers. They're too small. So I think that definitely the Celtics need to get, or Brad Stevens, like James said, definitely needs to open up his mind, play Robert Williams, and really just kind of open his mind, because definitely their defense is hurting them.
It's funny enough that you mentioned Daniel Tice, because if I've looked at his stats recently, he's been scoring like 15, 20 plus a game some nights. And like he's a really good offensive option, but I feel like if you watch him during games, like especially against big centers, like he's very soft on defense.
Yeah,
sometimes.
he's not strong. He's not strong.
He's not strong, but yeah, he's like a cat. I think I could replace him like a discount cat.
I could definitely see that, because we all know obviously Cat is capable of putting up big numbers, and he's a pussy on defense. And I think same exact thing with Daniel Tice. Okay. I'm so sorry, but I think that maybe a hot take, but
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, just keep the that kind of stuff, just keep it like on the low, like just don't swear too much.
My bad. I didn't.
Hey, that's fair. It's a one-time thing. You're good. It's your first time on. I'm not gonna. I can do whatever with it. But the next thing about the Sixers game I want to talk about mainly is the defense. Did you guys watch? I don't know. I was watching these. I think the second game. Did you guys watch the first game at all? The first game of the series?
I watched a little bit of the highlights, but
I haven't seen anything of it, to be honest.
I didn't extensively watch it, but because it was a tough matchup for them, and I kind of expected the Sixers to win the first game. I kind of hoped that the Celtics would bring it back, especially since Robert Williams was back for the second game. But again, like, he didn't play that much, at least, and it still hurt them at the end of the day, along with having Curry back on the Sixers for the second game. I mean, that hurt them as well. I mean, even though Seth Curry isn't a world beater, he can definitely score the ball, and he definitely facilitate for the team. So it's fine.
He's a good three ball shooter too.
Great 3-ball shooter. I mean, he's having a season for real. I mean, he at the moment he's averaging. I think it was something, I forget exactly what the numbers were, but I think that he was averaging 100% from free throw percentage this year, 60% from the field, and 50% from 3-point, which is absolutely insane. If he keeps that up, then
that's bizarre.
I don't see why he wouldn't be considered a threat for the Sixers now.
Yeah, so 60, 50, 100 would be the first. I remember you told me this. It would be the first ever player to hit 60 or 60, 50, 100 on that season, little shooting spread.
Split. Yeah.
Shooting split, yeah. And that would be crazy. I mean, he has a lot of, his load is a lot less just because they have the top three guys taking the main brunt of the force, and mainly the defense is going to focus on those three guys and leave Seth open for whatever he needs to do.
Exactly.
So yeah, I feel that. And yeah, I mean, like, I was going to mainly ask about like the defense, because I looked at the defensive rating for both the games. The Celtics defensive rating was 120 the first game and 125 the second game, which vice versa makes the Sixers offensive rating 120 and 125 respectively. And I mean, it kind of really just shows how well they played, like I'm assuming the top three guys, and probably Seth Curry too. And I
Mhm.
mean, do you have any comments on like how the defense could like potentially improve, like how they should match up in the future with with the top three guys on the Sixers? James
Reed.
first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, James, take that
So
first.
yeah, I mean, personally, I think that if if Curry continues to be a threat for the Sixers, they really need to focus on the perimeter defense and be able to guard on pass, maybe even past the perimeter. And I think that, like I said before, I think I really think that they should just let Robert Williams loose and be able to guard these top guys that are in the center position because it'll help their defensive rating a lot. Like I said before, Robert Williams is the best defensive center that you guys have on your team. And on top of that, I think that a lot of what I've noticed in past Celtics games is that they aren't a huge fans of switching. And if they do switch, they're slow on it. So if they are struggling with switching on defense, then they need to, one, work on their chemistry and be able to communicate on the court, and two, maybe switch up the defense to a zone because realistically,
Mhm.
teams like the Sixers are really defensive teams. So if you're gonna be lacking already on offense slightly, then you need to make up for it on defense. And as of right now, which we've mentioned multiple times before, the Celtics are lacking. So I think that they need to be able to step that up with either the switching game or uh, go into a zone.
Reed, do you have any extra comments on the defense of
Um,
of the Celtics?
Yeah, I think that against the Sixers, Embiid has proven time and time again that he can struggle immensely under a good double team.
That's a good point.
And I think that he's going to go into obviously he goes into the paint a lot. All right, that's what he does. And if the Celtics can get a good double team on him, he's going to struggle a lot more, because it's just been you watch the game and you can tell that whenever they double him, he either kicks it out or he'll take a bad shot, So they definitely need to start working on him specifically because you can't take away every option of a team. Obviously, there's always going to be something, especially on the Sixers who now have solid players in many positions. We have Seth Curry, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, just to name a few. Obviously they have good options, so I think that they should try to take away one of those like 100% instead of really trying to like dig at each of them a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Because like I think
Yeah.
that really if they take away Joel in the paint, then they're definitely going to have a way easier time defending them. Because yeah, Seth Curry can shoot, right? But I'd rather have some guy huck up 9 threes a game, than have Joel Embiid sit in the paint and get 25 easy points. You know what I mean?
That's fair. And so the last thing I'm going to mention is that Tatum was out for both of these games. So how do you think that would have made a change having
That's also
a dominant like leader / power forward? I think he could match up well against especially Ben Simmons or Tobias Harris, and that would probably leave the center position available for a double team. Do you think that would have affected the game at all? Reed, you can go first this time.
Yeah, I think that Jason Tatum definitely would have helped them. Obviously, I mean he's an offensive threat doesn't even begin to describe it. And then on defense, he's not terrible on defense either. So I think that Jason Tatum definitely could have helped them out, especially in that forward slot.
James, do you have anything to add?
I mean, the only thing that I would say is that I mean, realistically, I agree with you, Reed, but and to a certain standpoint, I mean, like I said before, that the Sixers already have a really good offensive rating, so being able to contain that entire team is difficult enough. But what I will say though is that Tatum being there on the offensive would have definitely helped and possibly would have won them that second game if he was there. So I think that, you know, Tatum on the floor doesn't totally shift the balance of their defense, but completely changes the game when it comes to offense. So I think that I mean, he is their best player. So realistically, he's going to be an absolute threat on the court, and the Sixers might have focused on him more had he been there. So if that was the case, then they probably would have won because there already were other guys on the Celtics that were scoring a lot, like you said, with Jaylen Brown, Mark Smart, and Daniel Tice, especially in the first game. Kemba Walker was a parent, but he needs to step up on top of that too, and they need if they have such a deep bench, in my opinion. But so like get those guys involved. Get Javante Green in there. Get Semi Olijeh in there. I know Peyton Pritchard got injured recently, and that he's coming back from that hard hit. But I mean, get some bench guys involved. I mean, if the starting lineup isn't providing what you need, then you got to be able to switch the game up, and that's when that leads me back to Brad Stevens not opening his mind as much. So
I think definitely Brad Stevens is at least the last couple games as they've been playing, Brad Stevens is definitely not helping the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he can change it up for the postseason because usually he is a really good postseason guy and he's able to.
I agree with that.
Yeah, he's able to scheme for certain guys, certain teams because he has that 7 games and he's able to like test the waters first couple of games and figure out what he needs to do to scheme for the future. Mm-hmm. And this is just a regular season. We'll see how it plays out. But if I want to transition to the next 2 games, I mean, the Cavs game was a complete blowout, and and the Chicago game, like I watched it and the Celtics entirely dominated that game. There's no chance I saw, there was no opening I saw, or no impactful moment that I saw from the Bulls that could have changed the tide of the game. I mean, there was not much really to talk about other than on the Cavs. Kevin Love was injured. I don't know if that would have mattered as much. I mean, if you guys have any opinions on that, like you guys.
Kevin Love might go to the Nets, to be honest.
They're talking about that, and JaVale McGee, the Nets are interested in him as well.
Yeah, for Reed, it would be great. I mean, the Cavs really. I think they're. Yeah, what's up?
Well, no, we definitely do need a center position. I mean, we have right now DeAndre Jordan, okay, and DeAndre Jordan isn't terrible, but he's way past his prime. Like, he's definitely not what we need. He's not as quick on defense anymore, and I think that the Nets right now, we need defense. Okay, we have Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. 2 of those guys, who will remain nameless, are notorious for being horrible on defense. They're so bad. So we definitely need defense. No doubt.
But
I'll be honest. A quick thing before you go, James. Like honestly, all 3 of those guys can have terrible defensive nights, and like if all 3 are terrible,
and also Kevin Durant he's fragile. Yeah, no, Kevin Durant, he may be big, but he's fragile, so he's not really that great on defense either.
Yeah. I think, James, we're going to say that about like all 3 of them could have a terrible defensive night at any game kind of deal.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, but I was also going to throw back to the Cavs game and that, like even though pretty much the entire team did terribly. I mean, they didn't even have a player that scored more than 13 points.
Yeah, no one topped 15.
Yeah, like I mean, like realistically, they don't even have that bad of a roster, in my opinion. I mean, like Garland came back, but and Sexton did okay, leading the team with 13 points, which is terrible. But I mean, like both of them, they're gonna.
And Andre Drummond only picked up 5 boards. Mm-hmm. He needs to be better if they're gonna win.
And in my opinion, I think Andre Drummond's on the way out of Cleveland. I think that he's going to leave during the offseason. Jared Allen will be the main center. But I mean,
I think would be a good option for them because Jared Allen's young, he's tough. He's a great rim protector, a good glass cleaner. So definitely Jared Allen is the move. Makes me cry a little bit thinking about giving him away.
But for the Cavs game, I mean, like the Celtics absolutely destroyed them in every quarter. I mean, they in the first quarter, the Celtics scored 38, which was right out of the gate already just spider monkey, absolute like going at their throats. In the second quarter, they scored 35 to the Cavs 30. Third quarter, they scored 41 to the Cavs 27, and in the fourth quarter, scored 27 again. So it's like, the Celtics absolutely dominated that game. To your point, Makoto, and I think that the Celtics matchup between the Cavs, which is insane to me, how the Nets could lose to them twice, and then the
Eat.
Celtics
Bro,
absolutely
don't
crushed them.
don't remind me. Don't
I
remind
know,
me.
I
I mean,
know, but like honestly, like
no,
it just baffles me
no, and I
how
mean,
the
same,
Cavs are so
especially as a
undefeated.
Nets fan. I mean, now getting beat by them once, Colin Sexton had incredible games for both of them. Getting beat by them once, it's like, all right, fine, but when fucking Kyrie Irving, sorry, I did it again.
You're good. You're good.
When Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant are on the floor, and you lose to a team that has no one that's really like no one on the Cavs has big of names as any of those players that I just named. So yeah, it was definitely baffling. But watching the games, you could definitely see that Cleveland knew exactly what they were doing. Sexton single-handedly dismantled the Nets defense in their overtime period. So yeah, watching those games, you could definitely tell that Nets defense is the problem, but that Cleveland has some offensive weapons.
Yeah,
Cleveland's tough.
and
They have a good roster, like Makoto, you said before. They definitely have a good roster.
Yeah, I wanted to just wrap it back to the Celtics before, and the last comments about the Cavs I'll make is just they have up and coming stars. I feel like they're not like all-star superstar names, but I think they're
They're
going to
still
be on the come up.
inconsistent.
They're
Yeah.
consistent. I think they're on the come up, and I think they're a young team that'll eventually become like the Celtics, where they have a bunch of young guys to develop into great guys.
Totally
Darius
agree.
Garland, Sexton, and Jared Allen are going to be the top three guys, and it's going to end up being like the Celtics. As long as they find a good GM and coach to put that team together, I think that'll be exactly how that team develops. And just going quickly to the Bulls game, I mean, not much really happened other than Levine dropped 30, and that's
Yeah.
really else. And then Wendell Carter was out, and I don't think a defensive center would have helped because we're more of a guard perimeter focused team.
Right.
So I
And
really
Tatum
think that
was
would have
back.
helped. And Tatum was back too, which really helped either our perimeter, and he's an all around scorer, so it didn't matter where he was, he could still score. And Wendell Carter might have helped the interior defense, but going to the outside, it's hard to guard these like four guys. Like if you play a 4 and out type offense, where you have like Tatum, Brown, Smart, and you can plug in whoever, like Aaron Nesmith even as the four guys out in the perimeter. It's impossible to stop these guys. And the last thing I wanted to bring up about the Bulls game is that the use of young guys that they put in, they started a lot of young guys and gave them a lot of minutes, like Javonte Green, you were mentioning, for example, at 18 minutes. Aaron Nesmith at 18 minutes. Samuel like 16 minutes. Carson Edwards was at 12 minutes, and he scored 6 points, which is pretty good for, I think, a rookie who has barely got minutes in the past 2 years when he was on the Celtics.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
this is
it
where
shows.
this is what I want to see more of from Brad Stevens. Get your whole team involved. You have a deep roster. You have like nearly what was it, 14, 15 deep roster now?
Yeah, 14 with all the guys excluding Peyton Pritchard because he's injured.
Yeah, so like it's like get all those guys involved. I mean, you have a lot of talent on the bench, so why not use it? I mean,
I completely agree.
Yeah, so I think that during the Bulls game, Brad Stevens did a great job of that. I mean, he got a lot of guys involved. They had their lowest scorer was Carson Edwards with 6 points. Other than disregarding the fact that players
that Tristan Thompson took no shots,
and he had 10 rebounds. So like that's great. Even though he didn't score, having those 10.
Oh yeah, no, big facts. I just thought that the fact that he played 17 minutes and didn't even attempt a single shot is hilarious.
Oh yeah, it's really funny, but
it's understandable because that's kind of what we signed him for, is to be that Al Horford type of player, like not on offense, but I feel like more of a
no doubt. He's definitely a glass cleaner, type player. Definitely not an offensive weapon. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, I feel like we have our offensive center as Tyson, and we have our defensive center as Thompson. I think we can always switch him out for whatever we need. And even though Thompson's small, he's still he's still is big enough to be able to guard most of these centers, stuff like Joel Embiid, which is going to be a whole different story.
Yeah, well, Joel Embiid is a different beast. And you gotta do something else about that guy.
And on top of it, during the Bulls game, don't forget to mention that Marcus Smart had 11 assists.
I think that this when the Celtics have a good facilitator like that on the court, getting guys like Tatum and Brown open shots, obviously they're going to win, okay? Because Jaylen Brown, both of them, Jaylen Brown and Tatum, can create their own shot. But if they have a good facilitator, like Marcus Smart dropping 11 dimes, they definitely are going to have a much smoother offense.
And just sorry to interrupt, but Zoom has the 40-minute limit, so I'm gonna quickly jump into this last segment. So just give me like a 1 minute reaction or 1 minute like kind of comment about the game. So we're gonna talk about the Lakers versus Celtics this Saturday, and like what's
Lakers
your
versus
quick
Celtics.
Lakers versus Celtics this Saturday on ABC, like the 30th, obviously. So James, give me your 1 minute sentence like reaction, like how do you feel about that game for the Celtics?
I think that it's scary, but it's doable. I genuinely think that that the Celtics can beat the Lakers if they all put in the work and that they have their main guys doing their job and they involve their bench. That's all I gotta say.
All right, Reed, what's your 1 minute reaction?
I think that, well, first off, it's going to be a hell of a game. Second off, the Brad Stevens definitely needs to go into his bench. If he wants to win this game, and the defensive players on the Celtics need to really step up and look at AD and LeBron and make sure that they really keep them in check.
All right, that's fair. And that is it for this week. We will catch you all next week. So the quick thing I want to talk about at the end of the show, I'll rinse and repeat again from the previous segment, is that I'm currently in college, and all three of us are in college. So the recording, like the posting and uploading, will be a little bit sporadic. It'll be Tuesdays and Thursdays every week, but I will announce when I'll upload during that week because I don't know when we're going to all be able to get together and be able to record this. So for this week it'll be Thursday. I don't know what's going to happen for next week. So for right now, just keep them on Twitter, SportsBitsPod, and just keep checking on updates because that's when I'll be tweeting and saying I'll be posting Thursday or I'll be busy, so Thursday, and then or if I can record Tuesday, I'll post it. But yeah, that's it for everybody. If you guys have any last closing words before we end it.
Nope, I'm good. Just thanks for having me, Moko.
Oh yeah, you'll see a lot more of Reed, especially because I'm liking it. I'm liking this chemistry we have here, all three of us on the Celtics bits.
Big three.
Oh yeah, the big three. All right, I will see y'all next week, everybody. Peace.